out of compassion for the sacred assembly and all living beings, please turn the wonderful Dharma Wheel to teach us how to live suffering and attain bliss and end birth and death, and quickly realize some birth.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa.
Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one.
Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one.
Namo saranto suchedoye olahadi samyao samputoshe.
Namo saranto suchedoye olahadi samyao samputoshe.
无上甚深微妙法，百千万劫难遭遇。我今见闻得受持，愿皆如来真实义。Supreme and wondrous Dharma, subtle and profound, rarely is encountered, even in billions of eons. But now we see and hear it and accept it reverently. May we truly understand the Buddha's actual meaning. Venerable Master and Dharma friends, 师父圣人，各位师兄，大家阿弥陀佛。Venerable Master, Dharma friends, my name is Heng Shi. Today is Sunday, July 4th, here in Queensland, Australia, and it's Saturday, July 3rd, one day before the celebration of the creation of a nation in North America, that is, United States of America. And we are going to be looking into the Flower Garland Sutra, the Dafang Guangpo Huayan Jing, the sutra's chapter on the 10 stages, the Bodhisattva's path to awakening. And we are almost at the end of that text. The Bodhisattva is officially graduated, and ceremonies have taken place that consecrate him or her, and he's about to become the Dharma prince, the Fa Wangzi, the son of the Dharma king, the daughter of the Dharma king. So the way the sutra is laid out is there are verses that follow the prose part, and we're in the verses. We're almost at the end of the verses. So today the topic is dragons. So stick around, stay with us. As they say, watch this space. First thing we'd like to do, though, is to invoke spiritual presence. What we do is we invite the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, the gods, the dragons, the eightfold pantheon of Dharma protectors to draw near, to be here, to show up. We invite them to join. And people who had the chance to attend Master Hua's sutra lectures saw this process every time. He made it the first thing that you do before you lecture on a sutra, excuse me here, is you請轉法輪, you ask that the Dharma wheel be turned, and you do it in a formal way. So Shifu he taught us how to do this, and you definitely had a feeling as you circumambulated, walked around with incense 3 times, knelt down, and then chanted just what Cliff chanted just a moment ago in 2 languages. You had a feeling that something real, although invisible, had just transpired, that someone came. There was a feeling somehow the space, the air became thick with presence. There was energy there that certainly my eyes didn't see it, but you saw it with your skin pores almost. You could feel something was heightened, something was charged with life. And my goodness, how powerful that was. And when you left that assembly, when it was over, there was a feeling of renewal, a feeling of having been cleansed. It's like you got your karma cleaned, your body, your mouth, and your mind, your nature somehow had been refreshed. It was an experience. And not only, I mean, you know, somebody says, yeah, prove it. Well, you can't prove it. Definitely the feeling was there, and you could talk to people to your left and to your right, and they would confirm that they had had an experience like that. And occasionally, Shifu would they say, break the proscenium arch, you know that phrase? And he would say, oh, well, look who's here today. Here is Sudana Shansai Tongzi has arrived. Oh, look, he would say, there's the Monkey King, Sun Wukong, he would say. We're like, Shifu? He said, yeah, this is a popular Dharma lecture, you know. And the dragons were here, and the gods were there celebrating the turning of the Dharma Wheel. So, and of course, we're like, what's all this? And yet, for Master Hua, this was part of the eternally dwelling three jewels: Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, Dharma protectors, gods, dragons, an eightfold pantheon. You know, it's like reality. So anyway, it was entrancing and captivating, and certainly what we do now, we don't have Shifu's Fa Li, his Gongda, his merit, his virtue, his Dharma strength. But if we can bring out some sincerity, I don't think we'll be rejected by the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha, the 10 directions in the 3 periods of time, and the Avatamsaka assembly of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. So let's try our best. Just do it. We do it in an American, Australian musical way. We added melody to it. People are invited to put their palms together if they care to. Here we go. Last time. So someone may ask, why are you playing a banjo in a sutra lecture? One reason is we're invoking with music, and another reason is I don't play piano or organ, right? But I have been to many Dharma assemblies, sutra lectures, and Dharma talks in Asia, where the first thing you do before you meet is some sweet lay person stands up, goes over to the old out of tune upright piano and plays Sanbao Ge, ran tian chang ye yu jiu xun huan. You know, and it's a great custom. It's a musical opening. And in the process of the singing part, you're activating the right brain. And sutra lectures and Dharma talks can be very left brain, very analytical. And when you activate the right brain, you bring into play another whole part of our human experience, kind of the aesthetic part, the part that sees holistically instead of analytically. And further, when you chant together, you put your breath together. You chant with a group. And when you put your breath together, you're in harmony, more so. So there's lots of advantages, I think. I grew up in the West, and I didn't learn piano. So I offer what I have, which is stringed instruments. And I don't know, it probably won't catch on. There aren't that many banjo players. I'll spare you the banjo jokes. There are lots and lots of banjo jokes for people who don't like banjos, right? So, but in any case, that's the reason why. And I think if we can, certainly I could learn to play the banjo better to make it more pleasant. But we've done it on mandolin, we've done it on mandola, we've done it on guitar, 12-string guitar, banjo. Currently, the banjo sounds nice, and I have a Dharma Wheel banjo. So that's the reason. And if people, maybe Jerry, our tech engineer, can scan the comments on YouTube, and if people really object to the banjo being played, we can definitely delete it. It doesn't have to be done that way, but it's what we're doing currently. And I find during the week, sometimes when I'm walking, my footsteps will just spontaneously go, Namo Da Fang Wang Fu, you know. So it's a good rhythm for accompanying you when you're there with your footsteps on the road. So sometimes before I sleep too, that melody will arise. Further, personally, that melody was that's the melody that people use when they do 3 steps, 1 bow from the Shanmen, the mountain gate, to the Da Dian, to the Buddha Hall, the city of 10,000 Buddhas. For all these many decades, 3 decades now, people have been continuing that pilgrimage method, the technique of taking 3 steps. Namo Da Fang Guang Fu Huayan Jing, Huayan Hai Hui Fu Pu Sa, right? So I did that many hundreds of thousands of times, and so I carrying it forward as a personal thing for me, but it's not fixed. And if I hear from enough people, they say, hey, monk, cut the banjo, drop the banjo, lose the banjo, lose that motorcycle, I would definitely be convinced that we've had enough banjo invocation. So, but if not, if people enjoy it, I'm happy to continue. Okay, what's going on here? Let's take a look. We want there we go. Oh, not that. Right. Entering, we had the 8 hallmarks of entering nirvana, Ba Xiang Cheng Dao, which turns out to have a lot of variety, a lot of variation. Here we are. This is today's start. Okay, for those of you who are helping me by translating, I'll give you, okay, feedback is people enjoy the banjo. Okay, excellent. Appreciate that. Please take that melody and make it your own. It could easily be carried over to the piano, to the organ, right? How many church sessions when the preacher man gets up and brings in the fire, how many of those begin with the choir master playing the piano, right? So the banjo is portable. Pianos aren't that portable. We are here today. This is where we're going to begin. We're going to begin with Pu Sa Zhu Ci Fa Yun Di, right there, for those who are translating into Chinese and Vietnamese. Deeply appreciative of your effort to allow this sutra lecture to go further around the world. So the Bodhisattva abiding on the stage of the Dharma cloud. Okay, we'll start there. We'll do 1, 2. We'll do 3. Let's do 3 in a row. Okay. Here we go, starting here. Okay, I'll give you a line right where you're sitting. Chant that line back to me. Call and response. Pu sa zhu ci fa yun di. Pu sa zhu ci fa yun di. Ju zu nian li chi fo fa. Ju zu nian li chi fo fa.譬如大海受龙雨。譬如大海受龙雨，四谛受法亦复然，四谛受法亦复然。Cross to the English. Okay, I'm gonna bring that. There we go. The Bodhisattva abiding on the stage of the Dharma cloud. Bodhisattva abiding on this stage of the Dharma cloud. Accomplishes the strength of mindfulness and sustains the Buddha Dharma, accomplishes the strength of mindfulness and sustains the Buddha Dharma, just as the great ocean receives the dragon's rain, just as the great ocean receives the dragon's rain. The Bodhisattva on this stage receives the Dharma in the same way. Bodhisattva on the stage receives the Dharma in the same way. Yeah, another one. 十方无量诸众生，十方无量诸众生，悉得闻持佛法，悉得闻持佛法，于依佛所闻法，于依佛所闻法，过于比较无有量，过于比数无有量。Said it wrong. Here we go. Limitlessly many beings throughout the 10 directions, limitlessly many beings throughout the 10 directions, might attain hearing and holding and sustain the Buddha's Dharma, might attain hearing and holding and sustain the Buddha's Dharma. Yet the Dharma he hears from a single Buddha, yet the Dharma he hears from a single Buddha surpasses those numbers by infinite amounts, surpasses those numbers by infinite amounts. One more. Chinese first, here we go. 一息之愿为胜利，一息之愿为胜利。一念普遍十方度，一念普遍十方度，疏甘露与灭烦恼，疏甘露与灭烦恼，是故佛说明法云，是故佛说明法云。Through awe-inspiring strength of his past vows for wisdom, awe-inspiring strength of his past vows for wisdom. In a single thought, he pervades lands of the 10 directions. In a single thought, he pervades lands of the 10 directions, pouring down sweet dew's rain to extinguish afflictions, pouring down sweet dew's rain to extinguish afflictions. Thus the Buddha names this stage the Dharma cloud. Thus the Buddha names this stage the Dharma cloud. Okay, thanks for hanging with me for that chanting portion. what's going on is the Bodhisattva. Bodhisattva is coming in for praise. He has made it. She. I'll just use the he, but you can substitute either pronoun, any pronoun you prefer. We know that Guanyin can make different bodies appear when the time is right. How much the more the 10 stage Bodhisattva can do that. So our Bodhisattva is abiding on the stage of the Dharma cloud. He lives here now. Bodhisattva is at home in the Dharma cloud stage. Fa Yun Di, the stage where Dharma, teachings of the Buddha, methods of practice, ways to help people wake up. You could even say medicine, Dharma medicine is so abundant. There's so much of it that it's like a cloud. Think of steam coming up from a pot that is rolling a boil, right, on the stove. And that steam, as long as there's water and the fire is still going, the steam will continue. The Dharma is like that now. It's just infinite in amount. And now shift your gaze from stovetop up into the heavens and look at some of those incredible, is it nimbocumulus? Any meteorologists with us? If Max were here, he could tell us. Nimbocumulus, are they the big ones? The thunderheads, right? They just boil and boil. And they're bigger than anything on the planet except maybe mountains, but they look like mountains made of moisture and atmosphere. And this is an analogy for how much Dharma there is now available to this Bodhisattva. She accomplishes the strength of mindfulness and sustains the Buddha Dharma. There's that word, isn't it? Mindfulness. Yes, indeed. 具足念力. Okay. Chinese, full, replete mindfulness strength. 4 words. 具足念力. So the strength of mindfulness. What do we say? Memory. For one, on the simplest level, doesn't forget. This Bodhisattva's memory is the strongest. And 持佛法, it's strong not only like a computer with some sort of, SSD hard drive, solid state drive, no longer a spinning platter that if you drop it, it gets out of adjustment, you lose your data. Now it's just the chip. It's just a piece of silicon, a silicon wafer with circuitry in it. And you can drop it, you can drop kick it, and you don't break it. They're still super expensive, SSD drives, but giving the progress of computer technology, those prices will drop. The Bodhisattva's mind now goes beyond the simple memory of a chip, beyond Moore's law, because why? His memory is not there to serve the bottom line of a corporation. His memory is there to serve keeping the Buddha's teaching alive. And I asked myself, I like to meditate. When I first got interested in Buddhism, I was 14, sitting in my own floor of my bedroom in Toledo, Ohio, when I first crossed my legs and thought, what's this about, this meditation stuff? When I got to college and met my first roommate, first time I laid eyes on my roommate, he was sitting in full lotus, meditating on the bed of our dormitory room and the room that we shared. And he had picked it up from his brother, who had learned Zazen at the Providence, Rhode Island Zen Center. And so the younger brother was used to imitate his older brother. He encouraged me to do something with some tradition behind it instead of just freelancing it the way I'd been doing, kind of experimenting. So he and I began to meditate. I got to Japan at age 19, thanks to Gary Snyder, Thomas Fitzsimmons, two teachers. They connected me with the expat Zen community in Kyoto, Japan. And we started meditating in a Zen temple on Taiji, under the inspiration and guidance of Uchiyama Kosho Roshi. And I like to meditate. I really enjoyed it. But, and in the process of meditating a lot now, at age 19, crossing my legs and meditating, I was experiencing some of the epiphenomena, the things that happen around the process of meditation, such as doing, okay, let me start this again. We're talking about Nian Li, right? Juzu Nian Li. The Bodhisattva on the stage of the Dharma cloud has strong mindfulness. His memory is powerful. And he's doing it to sustain the Buddha's teaching so that the Buddha's teaching doesn't go away, so that it's still available for people he cares about and for people who he've never met. But whoever finds their way to the Buddha's teaching, whoever starts asking these questions, why am I here? Why do things seem to hurt so much? Why are so many people doing things that clearly hurt themselves and they don't even know it? Why are they in this collective trance, right? These questions, looking out at the world around you and at your own experience. Why? What am I supposed to do if I want to be like the Buddha? What do I, important questions. When those questions arise, those answers will still be available. We used to call it public domain. Now it's called collective commons, right? It's group sourced, right? Crowdsourced. The Buddha Dharma is available to everybody. It doesn't belong to anyone. And with the strength of mindfulness, the Bodhisattva focuses on the Buddha Dharma, which is why his memory is so good. He's not a computer chip holding memory kind of passively or actively for data research. Not. Although you can certainly find the analogy to that is similar, but it's not the same. Here I am, back to my story. I left me meditating in Japan. What I experienced, even though I was totally a novice, just a beginner, I began to see what happened to my memory when I sat still and listened. I grew up with a hi-fi, stereo hi-fi, courtesy of my dad and my mom. My dad was just a standard hobbyist. He got a turntable. He got an amplifier and speakers. It was called a hi-fi, stereo hi-fi. And it was there in the living room. And to have something to play on it, my parents joined something called the Columbia Record Club. Columbia was the label, one of the many music labels. And the Columbia Record Club, every month, every couple of weeks, would send us a record. And they, of course, it was heavily their own publications, their own discs, but it was remarkably broad. And I got to listen to Harry Belafonte sing Calypso. Day-o, day-o, daylight come and me one go home. I got to listen to Burl Ives, they were one of the original American male folk singers in the folk revival, singing Froggy went a-courtin' and he did ride. Mm-hmm. I got to listen to Josh White sing about strange fruit hanging from those trees. And one meatball. Josh White sang one meatball. I got to listen to the Kingston Trio sing about Hang Down Your Head, Tom Dooley. I got to listen to the Broadway recording of My Fair Lady, The King and I, West Side Story, all of the great Broadway musicals of the 50s and 60s, Carousel, and Oliver, and Brigadoon, right? All those incredible musicals. And Camelot, Richard Burton, who couldn't really sing, but did a good job anyway of bringing it to life. And a little bit of opera, a little bit of classical music, a little bit of jazz, Dave Brubeck Quartet. And I listened, and I really, really listened. And music just took me to a place nothing else could. And I absorbed those things. And then at a certain age, I started buying my own records. The first 45 that I bought was Town Without Pity by Gene Pitney. And I won't do it for you. You would wonder what I was thinking when I sang it for you. I can still sing it, but I won't bother you with it. What I did by then was Peter, Paul, and Mary, folk music. Ian and Sylvia, folk music. Bob Dylan, folk music. Judy Collins, folk music. The Chad Mitchell Trio, right? This was my, I was at that age when folk music was the thing carrying the culture forward. Rock and roll hadn't happened. Elvis was definitely there. Buddy Holly was there, and the Ventures. California surfing scene was happening, but that was far away. In Toledo, we were Chicago and New York centric. And so the folk scene was happening largely in Greenwich Village in New York City and in Ann Arbor, just north of Toledo. So that was my entry. That was what I was feeding my ears, and through my ears feeding my mind, my brain. Back to Japan, sitting still in the Zendo at Antaiji, sitting for a week in silence, 8 hours a day, having Japanese Zen monks on all sides and behind me with Uchiyama Roshi setting the model, sitting there with us. My mind started to spit back everything I had heard. I replayed every single album, every single song, every single note that I had listened to. And my dad's stereo hi-fi in Toledo came back to mind. I was living in Kyoto, Japan, right? Eating a Zen macrobiotic diet. Now couldn't have been farther away from Oklahoma, where the wind comes sweeping down the plain. I'm sitting there trying to think, what am I supposed to do with my mind? Oh, I'm supposed to look into a koan. Okay. And it's like, when you're a jet, all the way from your first cigarette to your last die, and every note of every song, not only what came through the speakers of my dad's hi-fi, but all the TV commercials I'd ever watched. Brusha, 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 get the new Ipana with the brand new flavor. It's dandy for your teeth. Bucky Beaver singing to me about Ipana toothpaste, right? See the USA in your Chevrolet. America is asking you to call Chevrolet, right? Beer. We lived in Toledo and we were close to Milwaukee and Detroit. Smoother and fresher, less filling, that's clear. Blatz is Milwaukee's finest beer. Why am I thinking about beer commercials that I heard during the in between innings of baseball? I would watch baseball on TV, and beer, Stroh's and Budweiser and Blatz, and it all came to mind while I was sitting, relentless. It was like tape reels of tape recorder were playing back and playing, like I was emptying out my tape library. And I was not, you talk about the strength of mindfulness and memory. What I realized was whatever we hold in front of our eyes and ears, particularly, but also our nose, tongue, and body, is there. We have it. So what are you putting in front of your eyes today, Mr. and Mrs. Dharma Assembly, right? Mr. and Mrs. Shananza Shanyuren. What are you watching? Whatever it is, you've got it. It's yours. You have recorded it into your eighth consciousness. I didn't have the categories at the time, but to understand this process, but clearly something had recorded every note that I'd listened to, every note of music, every TV commercial, and every magazine, every conversation, of course. But while I was sitting, the music came back so strongly. Antaiji is no longer in Kyoto. It's moved into rural Japan, but it was in a place called Kitaku, the northern section, Beichu of Kyoto. Gentaku is the neighborhood. Omiya was the bus stop. And so you're sitting there for hours and hours, right? Nothing going on. You're sitting, and if you move, you get whacked with the sword. And so you're sitting still, and you could hear the bus come chugging up the hill, slowly making its way up to the bus stop. And you could hear when the bus arrived, the door would open, and the recorded Japanese buses at the time, 1969, were incredibly high tech. And the little voice would come out, Sugi no wa kitaku gentaku omiyo de gozaimasu. Gentaku de gozaimasu. Omiyage de gozaimasu. The voice would say, our next stop is Northern Gentaku Omiya Station. Please get off. And you would, hear this happening outside, and then another entire Broadway musical would come to mind. So the point I'm making with this is, even though I was a brand new beginner, brand new meditator, didn't have any Buddha Dharma context for what was happening. I hadn't studied the tradition of meditation at all. I was thrown in the deep end of the pool, sitting in a sesshin in the Soto lineage of Eiheiji, from Dogen Zenji all the way down. And yet I was experiencing the results just the way anybody would who applied the method to their body, mouth, and mind. I was having the reality, the empirical experience of Zazen, of Buddha Dharma applied to my own body and mind without having the names for it. I didn't have any left brain connection to what was happening, but I was certainly experiencing what was happening. My mind was, I will say, purifying itself, spitting back, going down to erase maybe the contents of my brain that I had to that point in the 19 years that I'd been alive. I didn't sit long enough to experiment whether or not I could get past the experiences of 19 years into other contents of my eighth consciousness, maybe from past lives. Don't know. I didn't, because it was such a wonderful place to meditate, and Uchiyama Roshi had created this world where every day you sat 2 hours in the morning, 1 hour at night, minimum, and on sesshin, which were once a month in silence. I didn't mention that part. There was no talking during this time. That was key, just to stop this outflow and to just totally put the energy into your circuitry, right? During sesshin, it was 8 hours of meditation in silence. And so it was very conducive to checking the strength of your mindfulness. And for me, it was just raw. I just like, whoa, sitting down and watching my mind gush back all the stuff that I had put it in. So our Bodhisattva on the 10th stage, that's the end of that story. But that was my first experience, was there's something going on here. This is really powerful. What is happening? You know, why is my mind giving me everything back? And what happens once it's empty? Quote, you know, do you switch to a past life? Who knows? Well, somebody does, because this is what meditators do. I left on Taiji after 4 months because I had to go back. And I had to go back to deal with family matters. So the strength of mindfulness that the Bodhisattva on the 10th stage has now is bukasui, is truly inconceivable. Because why? At this point in the 10th stage, having been through stages 1 to 7, where he's going through the 6 paramitas, one by one, essentially, where his psychic power is now there, his compassion is alive in his life. It is his motivator now. He's connected to other beings. He has gone through the 6th stage, where prajna, wisdom, has arisen. And he now can use his mind analytically, or he can use it reflectively. He has those two qualities of wisdom, provisional and ultimate, are now at his command, or her command, right? Then between the 7th and the 8th stage, he realizes what is called effortless wisdom, right? Effortless practice that he no longer has to form an intention. The wisdom is already flowing. He goes to number 8, where he has this knowledge of, he studies living beings, and he knows everything there is to know about worlds full of living beings. In the 9th, the Dharma that he needs to teach all those beings arises. He becomes an excellent Dharma master, Dafasher. Now in the 10th, it's the last barriers, the last bit of ignorance that he, mind you, as a bodhisattva, he keeps a touch of ignorance there, they say, to stay in touch with them. He's not a Buddha yet. But all of the barriers that could have kept him from excavating, discovering all the contents of his mind, they're gone. So his mindfulness is now 100%. And his ability to teach is endless, like clouds, Dharma clouds. Water rising up, meeting cooler air, appearing as droplets, raining back down into the ocean, arising as moisture, right? Going through this cycle. This is now his ability to teach with the Buddha's methods. So the reason why I wanted to explain it this way is I want to humanize it. So it's not that the 10th stage Bodhisattva is kind of like Paul Bunyan, kind of Minnesota, kind of Michigan, kind of New York, kind of California. He's there, but he's like legendary. Yeah, haha. Davy Crockett, haha. Yeah. Sam Houston. These American heroes of the frontier who we kind of know about, kind of don't. Are they kids' books? Are they Walt Disney, movies? Are they, or were they really? Is this some kind of paradigm, some kind of an archetype that we Americans need to tell ourselves about our story? That kind of thing is not really. Bodhisattva is not that. It's you when you apply the methods explained in the 10 stages to your shen, xin, xing, ming, your body, your life, your nature, your mind. Body, your life, your mind, your nature. This is organic. This is as real as making bread, right? Dough, water, yeast, let it rise, punch it down, let it rise, beat the bubbles out of it, you know, add some raisins and bake it. And it comes out, let it cool, and you've got raisin bread. Same. This is a recipe. The 10 stages are a recipe for creating a bodhisattva feast. What is it? A bodhisattva dish, right? Bodhisattva bread. Nutritious for everybody. So there we go. Strength of mindfulness. When I was meditating, I had no Buddha Dharma. Only pay attention to your sitting, says Dogen. And so we Soto types didn't even have koans. There's the Rinzai school that has koans where you interact with your teacher. Uchiyama was good. He was very interested in people waking up. He was a great teacher, a kind-hearted man who was an origami master, could fold paper into things you couldn't imagine. So we didn't have, he lectured too. He would explain. I didn't have enough Japanese to be able to benefit from the lectures. But only when I got to Gold Mountain Monastery and met Master Hua did the breadth of the Buddha's teaching, the Buddha Dharma, come alive. And Shifu would teach whatever we were capable of learning. He could teach it. And things he didn't know, he arranged for others to teach. There was constantly a language class going in the dining room. Poor Ron Epstein knew a bit of French. Shifu said, "Oron, teach French." But Shifu, go ahead. We need to learn how to translate. So Ron, you know, who hadn't studied French for, you know, a long time, had to dig out his book so we could all learn from him. Bhikshuni Hung Xian taught Sanskrit. We had a Sanskrit class at Gold Mountain. And the students from the Zen Center would come over to take the Sanskrit class because it wasn't available at the Zen Center. Suzuki Roshi didn't have a Sanskrit class going. He had other classes going, but not Sanskrit. So, you know, Master Hua wanted us to learn the traditional classical Dharma lessons and then all the expedient ways to share it. Just, you know, so to sustain the Buddha Dharma, oh my goodness. He said, Master Hua said, we're going to translate the Buddhist canon, the Tripitaka. Get to work. What did he do? Well, 90 minutes of every night, he explained a sutra every night. Saturdays twice, Sundays twice. Thursday night, he didn't lecture, his students lectured, and he came to listen, to see how we were doing, right? He meant it. When you say vows, a vow, to make a vow, we're on our third stanza already here, past vows for wisdom. With Master Hua, that vow came from his heart. It was because he wanted the Buddha Dharma to spread in the West. He did. He really had that feeling. That was what he was all for. He committed his life to helping people wake up, helping us wake up, to make Buddhas and Bodhisattvas out of flesh and blood, not only clay. He also made 10,000 clay Buddhas. They're at the city of 10,000 Buddhas. Go look. But he wanted to make Buddhas and Bodhisattvas out of people, from people. Okay, line number 3. Just as the great ocean receives the dragon's rain, the Bodhisattva on this stage receives the Dharma in the same way. Oceans and dragons. It's clear that the Buddha wanted people to understand the size of things like compassion and wisdom mindfulness. So he used natural imagery. He used oceans, mountains, sand grains, trees, right? Elephants, rain, right? Nature, the world around him and everyone, to convey how big, how immense things were. World systems, right? In numbers, grains of sand in the Ganges, motes of dust, particles of dust. He would say, count them and then multiply them and count all the dust particles in a world. And that's you multiply that by, he used Sanskrit numbers, right? To like a million, billion, trillion. So anyway, nature, the oceans come in for a lot of use in Buddhist sutras. The way the ocean receives the dragon's rain. That's how the Bodhisattva gets the Dharma. So when it rains on the ocean, anybody been on a Pacific storm? I have. Coming back from that, when I had to leave Japan, I got on board the SS Oakland from Sealand Services, heading for Oakland, California through Seattle. And I was the messmate third class, thanks to Gary Snyder, who put me onto this method of coming home. I don't know if it still works this way. Maybe so. Maybe somebody will tell us they've done this too. But if you are in a foreign port and you need a way home, check out the Seamen's Union, the Sailors Union. If they need a sailor in an emergency when the ship is en route, they want someone with an American passport for tax purposes. So Gary Snyder said, yeah, he says, if you're in Japan and you need to come home, you can pay a lot for a plane ticket, but you come home, having spent all that money. If you go down to the Union Hall, it's the Seamen's Union, and register, they need a sailor, they pick you, you come home, you have money in your pocket, and you've had the experience. So do that. So I did, sure enough. And my goodness, went through a hurricane, the tail of a hurricane. We tried to avoid it. It was happening in the Northern Pacific. And our captain went way up to Alaska to try to get around it, but we couldn't. We went through it. And seeing 60-foot, that's too big, not that big, 30-foot waves. It's astonishing, the power of the rain coming into the ocean, right? And that's how the Bodhisattva now accepts the Buddha's Dharma teachings, just the way water pounds into the ocean and the wind lifts those waves. Oh my goodness. It's humbling to see how insignificant my little body is when you're looking up at a wave cresting over your head. Indeed. So why does it say dragon's rain? And that's something I wanted to talk about. We'll go through, let's see here. Yep, okay. Hold that thought. Dragons, we're coming back to the dragons. The Bodhisattva receives the Dharma in the same way. Limitlessly many beings throughout the 10 directions might attain hearing and holding and sustain the Buddha Dharma, yet the Dharma he hears from a single Buddha surpasses these numbers by infinite amounts. Okay, does people see the logic here? It says, let's take 10 directions, north, south, east, west, the intermediates above and below, and all the living beings in them. Those living beings might obtain an ability to 1 Shi Fo Fa, using the capacity of my current conscious mind to remember it, right? So you have the single vehicle, you have the 2 truths, You have the 3 poisons. You have the 4 noble truths. You got the 5 roots and the 5 powers. You got the 6 paramitas. You got the 7 bodhi shares. You have the 8-fold path. You have the 9 stages of a decaying corpse. You have the 10 paramitas. You have the 11 wholesome dharmas. You have the 12 links of conditioned arising. I don't think there's a 13. 13 dutangas, maybe 14. I don't know. So yeah, you can go through the lists of dharma from your conscious mind, and that's good. That's what we got until we open wisdom, right? However, the bodhisattva on the 10th stage now can hear dharma from a single Buddha and completely absorb it all, so that he surpasses the amount of dharma all those living beings in all 10 directions can retain by an infinite amount. He can hear it better now. His ears are clean. He can hear it all, right? He's got ears in every hair pore. Guanyin Pusa with her 1,000 hands, 1,000 eyes, and 1,000 ears, right? That's you can imagine what our bodhisattva now can hear from even a single Buddha. Yet our bodhisattva hears from limitless Buddhas who have been on his case since the 8th stage, when they appeared and said, don't stop, don't quit, keep going. Living beings are suffering, don't forget, right? So he hears dharma now from countless Buddhas. All right. And through awe-inspiring strength of past vows for wisdom, in a single thought, the bodhisattva goes to lands of 10 directions, pouring down sweet dew's rain to extinguish afflictions. And the Buddha names the stage the Dharma cloud. Okay, with this verse, our bodhisattva goes into action. So far, we've been hearing about kind of what his state and praises of his state, but that was static. He hadn't taken it. He'd been receiving the rain of Dharma. At this point, he goes out to give the rain of Dharma. Awe-inspiring strength of past vows for wisdom simply means the Bodhi resolve, right? And I've been saying this for quite a while now, and wanting to find the right. I know there's a way to explain this that has eluded me so far. I'm not satisfied with how I try to make this come alive. But the Bodhi resolve, Putishin, Bodhicitta, Master Hua said is the turning point. Master Changguan, the 4th Avatamsaka school patriarch, said the same. Bodhi resolve is the real difference. It's the milestone. And the other one is that place between the 7th and 8th stage where you attain irreversibility. Those are the 2 real key moments before Buddhahood on the Bodhisattva path. And the Bodhi resolve is 2 things. It's you, me, asking ourselves, what do I want to do in my life? What am I capable of? And having that question carry you to the realization that you don't have to stop before perfection, before Buddhahood, that my apparatus is capable of perfect wisdom, complete wisdom, just like our bodhisattva here is now attained. Don't accept less, right? Accept no substitutes. This is your future, my future. That's the first part of the Bodhi resolve. And the second part, so let me say, it's hard. I don't feel satisfied that I have brought that to life for people. It's like, what I keep saying is, you ask yourself, what am I capable of? What is my potential? And it doesn't matter, male, female, east, west, young, old. When that question arises, if at that point, you don't even have to name it Buddha, you can say, I have the potential to be really wise. And I don't want to accept anything less. I can. But then key to the Bodhi resolve is the second part of this, where you say, the way I'm going to do it is Buddhist code language, taking living beings across. Taking living beings across means shining a bright light in every corner of my mind so that the shadows evaporate. Purging every doubt. Smoothing every up and down emotion. Expanding the measure so nothing that I've done wrong can shock me. Nothing that I've done right moves me, pleases me more than other things, right? So all of this is all taking living beings across, dealing with my own hang-ups and attachments and deficiencies and shadows, and accepting them into my deeper mind, my bigger mind, my broader, expanding the measure of my mind to contain all the stuff that I've done that makes me cringe, right? And saying, yeah, I did all that. It's really covered over, really dark. And that's not the story. Those are just more clouds covering the sunlight of wisdom in my mind. So turn those clouds of ignorance into clouds of Dharma, right? So that's the Bodhi resolve. And that's the key moment. So the Bodhisattva awe-inspiring strength of her vast past vows for wisdom started there. Now he's graduated. In a single thought, the Bodhisattva now, following those vows to wake up 4 living beings to teach, to benefit, to actually be able to help, carries him to lands of the 10 directions, pouring down sweet dew's rain so that troubles go away. He's able to cure the blues for living beings now. The Buddha names the stage the Dharma cloud, cloud of Dharma. Hallelujah, amen. Bodhisvaha. Sopoha. Right? So take a look here. What have I got? Dragons. What about those dragons? Well, look at that. Here's a dragon, half a dragon, with a pearl. Notice that green pearl there? Anybody seen that golden dragon before? What about this one? Oh, check out this dragon. He's got a green flaming pearl. This dragon has googly eyes. He's got fangs, whiskers, horns. You can see his sinewy, kinetic qualities. Where have we seen these windows before? Oh, look at this one. Got to make it a little bigger here. Look at that dragon. Here's a deva flying down. Here's a lion. Oh, that's Manjushri. But look at the dragon. There's the whole dragon with his pearl. What else we got here? What about this one? Wow, here's Guanyin Pusa. And a red and green dragon. Look at that, right? With their pearls. Every dragon with a pearl. Okay, for people who don't know, these are stained glass dragons at the Berkeley Buddhist Monastery, courtesy of Carolyn Hansen, Serenity Glassworks. And man, oh man, these are the most wonderful dragons. So our Berkeley Monastery is blessed with many, many dragons carved out of wood, made in stained glass. Ah, boy, oh boy, oh boy. Here's Erstor Bodhisattva with a big yellow dragon and another red dragon. And each of these, oh, look at that. Each of these dragons has a pearl, you'll notice. Okay. So dragons with their pearls. That's so interesting. Here, take a look here. Yeah, do we have dragons? Oh yeah, we have dragons. This is called a bearded dragon. He actually lives here. It's not far from where I'm sitting. Here he is. Same guy. Interesting. So Australia has not only bearded dragons, we have eastern water dragons. Look at this. Good grief. Is that a dragon? Well, look at his feet. Look at his tail. Sure looks like one. Eastern water dragon. Here he is. Look at him. These are living critters that share the bush here in eastern, look at his tail, eastern Queensland here with us. So what in the world is going on here? Let's take one more look here. What about this one? Here's a pearl, but that's Dizang Pusa. It's actually Jizo Bosatsu. He liberated that pearl from a dragon. Dragons and pearls are inseparable. And here's one from a classic Buddhist story found in the Lotus Sutra. Here's the Buddha surrounded by his attendants and bodhisattvas, but look who's in front of him. That's the daughter of the Dragon King offering her pearl to the Buddha. That's a story for another time, but how interesting, right? Long Nu is the dragon's king's daughter, giving her most prized possession to the Buddha. All right. Well, what's going on here? Look at all these different photos of Buddhas and images of Buddhas. What I wanted to share was we've had the story that the dragons control the rain, says our verse today. That the dragons, it's the dragon's reign. And in Buddhism, dragons are a fact of reality. They're a fact of life. They're so much a part of everyday Dharma that we know their names, right? They're called Ba Da Long Wang, the 8 outstanding dragon kings. They have names such as, not you, thank you. Here we go. Their names are Dragon King Nanda, Dragon King Upananda, Dragon King Sagara, Dragon King Vasuki, Dragon King Takshaka, Dragon King Anavatapta, Dragon King Manasvin, and Dragon King Utpalaka. There's another set of names, right? Bada Long Wang have other lists, including Chidi Long Wang, Dharani Nindara, Dragon King Earth Sustainer, Huanxi Jinxi Long Wang, Dragon King Nanda and Upananda, which means happiness, right? Ma Luo Long Wang, Ashvatara, Dragon King Horse Mule, and then Muchilindho, Dragon King Muchilinda, also called Mukalinda, right? Liberated. Then there is Yi Meng, Manasvin, fierce intention, strong opinions, Dragon King. He must be fairly stubborn in his points of view, right? So Chiguo, Dhritarashtra, Dragon King, sustaining the nation, same name as one of the 4 kings of heaven. Da Hei Long, Mahakala, Dragon King, Big Black. And Yi Lo Ye Long, Dragon King Elapatra, cultivating auspicious harmony. Right? How about this? It's so, and then there are different names for Hindu dragon kings. So here we have here we go. So funny for me, I grew up in Toledo, Ohio, playing baseball and listening to folk music and Broadway musicals, right? You know that about me. Why am I talking about dragons? They were not part of my upbringing. When we come to the Buddha Dharma that our 10 Stage Bodhisattva now is committed to sustain, right? Dragons are a part of it. So much so that our teacher, Master Hua, talked about dragons among his disciples. And they had Dharma names, just the way we human disciples had Dharma names. It was everyday reality around our teacher. And they said, for example, Steve Jobs had a reality distortion field, right? When you were Steve Jobs, one of the true movers of Apple computer, they said when you were around him, he would have you believe things that in other circumstances you might not believe, but just something about the force of his charisma made those things real. Reality distortion effect, the Steve Jobs effect. When you were around Master Hua, it was so much not reality distortion, it was you went into reality correction, almost reality clarification. It wasn't that things got fuzzy or hazy, like if you've had too many drinks or something. In fact, it was as if you were focusing the lens of a camera to see something so precisely that details emerged that you weren't able to see before, but had always been there, hiding in plain sight. And to have Master Hua say, yeah, I had disciples come and ask me to be their teacher, to take refuge. And I said, why? Why in the world would I want to do that? What's the point of that? And they said, it's your vows. You have bigger, deeper vows than any other monks we've met. We've been waiting for you. We want to take refuge with you, and all our children and relatives want to take refuge with you. So Shifu took 2 in particular, gave them the name Jishio and Kuaidu. Hurry up and cultivate and quickly cross over. And they're dragon disciples. And okay, our eyes are, oh, really? Okay. And it wasn't a question. And so you think, oh, what's going on here? These are 2 collisions of cultures, right? Science hasn't identified dragons. And yet, the ancient cultures of India named their dragons. The ancient culture of China named their dragons. Buddhism, when it came to China from India, came intact with dragons. The Chinese had their own. Those 2 ancient cultures had been looking at and relating with dragons for a very long time. How much of the Buddha's life story do you consider fairy tales? If the answer is none, then your mind may be open to hearing realities that are not confirmed by science's instruments and measurements. The Buddha, when he was just new as an awakened being and was gathering disciples, tamed and subdued fiery dragons who were they're devouring and destroying. He went into their cave, and the next morning, although he'd been tricked into the cave, and there were rival teachers who hoped that the dragon would devour the new Buddha, the next morning, the dragon, his fire was out, and he was guai, kneeling in front of the Buddha. I will be your disciple. The Buddha tamed these fierce spiritual beings known as dragons, and then used them in his teachings, taught them just the way he taught everyone else, because the dragons who could have psychic powers, they were in the animal realm, but they were superior. They asked the Buddha how to be like him. They too admired the Buddha's virtue and his wisdom and his compassion, and they gave up being nasty leaders of fierce territories and became disciples and protectors of the Dharma. Oh, okay. So what did the Buddha teach them? He taught them how to hold the precepts, how to tame their appetites, and to cultivate. Qi xiu kuai du, quickly cultivate, hurry up and cross over, right? That's what the Buddha taught them. And Master Hua did the same. Okay, all right. And one of the Chinese teachings says that the ecosystem, our environment, is a work in progress. It's balanced by Tian, Di, and Ren, by heaven, by earth, and by humanity. And each of these talents, the san cai, the three talents, the three forces, have to be in harmony for the earth to be flourishing and in harmony and healthy. The planet, our ecosystem, is a being. It's constantly evolving and changing based on how heaven is doing its job, the invisible realm, how earth, the elements, are doing its job, and how people are doing its job. The dragon's part is the Tian part to bring the rain down in the right seasons, in the right amount, so everything flourishes and everyone gets their rightful necessities, right, to thrive. If the earth part or the human part doesn't do their job, the dragons might want to make it rain, but they can't. When you have 112 degrees in Portland, Oregon last week, and Canada 49 degrees Celsius, breaking all historical records because of what's called a heat dome, everybody looks to the dragons and says, hey, dragons, what's going on there? And the dragons say, hey, humans, which one of our three is not doing their job? Which one of our trinity needs to do a better job? Humans, right? So did you all see in the Gulf of Mexico, there's fire in the water off an oil platform? The ocean is burning. It shouldn't happen, should it? Water is supposed to put out fire. There's a scary thing. Check CNN or what's your news source. There's a fire now in the ocean. The ocean is burning because some oil company lost control of a pipeline underwater and the ocean is burning. And here are the ships pouring water on the ocean. It's like, that shouldn't be happening because we humans have not done our job with our part of the three-legged trinity that balances heaven and earth. Don't blame the dragons. Look to ourselves to do our part, to keep everything in balance, and then the rains can return. So, my goodness, dragons. Yeah. I have another. So, what I'm pointing to is our Western civilization. I'll include Australia and North America and Europe, is relatively new. Even so, in Europe, there are dragons. St. George and the Dragon is one of the most well-known. There are friezes on cathedrals of dragons that came and devoured villages, and it's as the church took charge of education, many of those stories were suppressed, but they're still there around the edges of history. So the older a civilization is, the more they remember their dragons. The Chinese have been recording stories of dragons from the beginning, right? For a very long time. Look at what the Chinese have done with their knowledge and their celebration of dragons. Notice their pearls. Coming out of a cloud. All right, you get the idea, right? So how interesting that we the boundaries of our knowledge seem to contract with science. The thinking of traditional science since the Renaissance is, if we can measure it with our instruments, it's real. If we can't measure it, it doesn't exist. Consciousness is a perfect example. And yet, pre-Renaissance science, which is profound, you know, creation of mathematics, for example, and all, affirms the presence of dragons. And our teacher, you know, when we get to Buddhism, you can pick it up or you can ignore it and pretend it's not there. But our teacher even teaches dragons. And they listened to him because he had virtue, because he was kind, you know, because he had wisdom, and because of his vows, they say. So I don't know. What do you do with that? One thing, I went looking for a song to share. Of course, we have one, and this is probably my one chance in a year to share one of my very, very favorites, one of humanity's best dragon songs, best children's songs. Puff the magic dragon lived by the sea and frolicked in the autumn mist in a land called Honolulu. Little Jackie Paper loved that rascal Puff and brought him strings and sealing wax and other fancy stuff. Puff the magic dragon lived by the sea, frolicked in the autumn mist in a land called Honolulu. Puff the magic dragon lived by the sea and frolicked in the autumn mist in a land called Honolulu. This is written by Peter Yarrow of Peter, Paul, and Mary. Bless his heart. And it's a sad, sad song, right? And it doesn't have anything to do with smoking marijuana. It doesn't. Don't even think that. That's not where this came from, right? It's a real dragon. Together, Jackie Paper and Puff would travel on a boat with billowed sail. Jackie kept a lookout perched on Puff's gigantic tail. Noble kings and princes would bow whenever they came. Pirate ships would lower their flags when Puff roared out his name. Right? Okay. Why is it sad? A dragon lives forever, but not so, little boys. Painted wings and giant's rings make way for other toys. One gray night it happened, Jackie Paper came no more. And Puff, that mighty dragon, ceased his fearless roar. His head was bent in sorrow. Green scales fell like rain. Puff no longer went to play along the cherry lane. Without his lifelong friend, Puff could not be brave. So Puff, that mighty dragon, sadly slipped into his cave. Right? So what happened? Jackie Paper grew up. And poor Puff, who loved playing with little boys, little girls, lost his friend, you know. So people sing this song, and when they get to that the last two verses, they go, oh, I don't know if my child was prepared for that trauma, that sadness. So recently, while I was checking the lyrics for Puff, I ran into someone who contributed another verse. And I admit it, when I read it, I burst into tears. It's so touching because all my life of music, I've known that poor Puff was sad, right? So somebody contributed. I don't know who added. It might have been Peter Yarrow. I don't know. Somebody added a last verse, which I share with you now. Puff the magic dragon flew out on the strand. He looked down and there he saw footprints in the sand. A voice said, Mr. Dragon, please don't be so sad. My name is Jenny Paper. I was sent here by my dad. So we can do two verses here. Won't you do the whole thing? We're out of time. Here we go. A dragon lives forever, not so, little boys. Painted wings, giant's rings make way for other toys. One gray night it happened, Jackie Paper came no more. Of that mighty dragon, he ceased his fearless roar. His head was bent in sorrow. Green scales fell like rain. Puff no longer went to play along the cherry lane. Without his lifelong friend, Puff could not be brave. Puff, that mighty dragon, sadly slipped into his cave. Oh, Puff, the magic dragon, lived by the sea, frolicked in the autumn mist in a land called Honolulu. Puff, the magic dragon, lived by the sea, frolicked in the autumn mist in a land called Honolulu. You ready? Puff, the magic dragon, flew out on the strand. He looked down, he saw footprints in the sand. A small voice said, Mr. Dragon, please don't be so sad. My name is Jenny Paper. I was sent here by my dad. Oh, Puff the magic dragon lived by the sea, frolicked in the autumn mist in a land called Honolulu. Puff the magic dragon lived by the sea and frolicked in the autumn mist in a land called Honolulu. Thank you, Peter Yarrow. That song is eternal. All righty. I'm going to ask Jin-Chuan Shi to come on board here, ahoy there, and tell us what's going on at Berkeley Monastery. Yeah.
So we have our regular schedule. If people are interested, you can, Dharma is going to the website, berkeleymonastery.org. We have our Bowing for India still going on for Friday. I think we'll be doing it 3 more times to finish up. We also have, oh, it's not working?
Look at this, connection is not private.
Interesting.
This website, have we been hacked? Might be impersonating Berkeley Monastery. I can go back, or this connection is not private.
Yeah, that's right. I got the same thing. Wow.
Okay. Yeah.
We better go check this out.
Jerry, well, yeah, we need to bring in our A team, bring in our varsity team. So you check that out. Okay, we can remember what it was. You want to tell us?
Yeah, it's okay. So Friday, we have the Bowing for India. On our regular schedule is still the same. So Saturdays, we have a full day of Dharma events from afternoon 12:30 recitation and 2 p.m. with Jingfo Shi, 2 to 3:30 Amitabha recitation. Other than that, I think what else we want to announce? Pretty much that's it. We have our online practices, all their daily ceremonies. So.
And Avatamsaka recitation.
Yeah, and CDDB is having the ongoing Avatamsaka recitation. So in fact, our afternoon recitation begins at 12:25 and we finish at 12:55 so people could get to the Avatamsaka recitation.
All righty, that's good. Thank you for that. We are in consultation with Jin-Chuan Shi and also Dharma Master Jin Yong. We were talking about what might be our next sutra portion when the 10 stages is over. And it's looking like we will be working on the piece of the Avatamsaka called Pusa Wen Mingpin. Bodhisattvas asked for clarification. I still have to talk to Marty, Professor Verhoeven, about this to see what his plans are, because he is also explaining a text close to this. So we want to coordinate, but it looks like that's a wonderful chapter where 10 leaders of Bodhisattvas come out and talk to Manjushri Bodhisattva, and Manjushri is asking them about questions, which then they respond in verse. And it's not a very long chapter, but it's full of, again, those natural images that the Buddha used that are memorable, and they go in print in the mind because there's many pictures from nature. He talks about the mind like a painter, like a master artist, a painter who can paint anything from his brushes. And the mind is that way, so things like that. So that's our plan, but not yet. It's not fixed. We may refine it further and such. Okay, 130 friends on YouTube today. Good. And do check out the Avatamsaka recitation happening at City of 10,000 Buddhas and also here at Gold Coast Dharma Realm. We are, here we go, Medicine Buddha mantra, here we are. Australia is going through multiple lockdowns. Sydney is locked down. So Bernie and Xingfei are probably at home watching lockdown. We here in the Gold Coast and Brisbane just came out of a 3-day lockdown because cases of the new strain of COVID, the Delta strain, are being found in Australia. So we're cautious and contact tracing. Please be healthy, everybody. Have us, what do we say, a safe 4th of July. With the conditions, the weather conditions and the drought in California, people are still buying fireworks like gangbusters. It's just too risky. Once you start a fire, you know how you'll feel after that if you were the cause of a forest fire. So, you know, put those fireworks in your wisdom. Watch virtual fireworks, right? But don't light the wick of a firecracker or a bottle rocket and send it off into space. Man, that is just too dangerous. So enjoy the celebration of the birth of a nation. Maybe we can get back to those values that animated us at the start. Subtract the slavery and the racist perspective and evolve, right? Bring the Buddha Dharma to bear, where all living beings have the Buddha nature and all can wake up. Meanwhile, we need to recite Medicine Buddha's mantra. Send out those good vibes to the world. Here we go. Samyak Sambuddhaya Adhyata Om Vasaji 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 Sankate Swaha Om Namo Bhagavate Sajaguru Durya Prabha Rajaya Tagataya Arahate Samyak Sambuddhaya Tadyata Om Vasaji 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 Sankate Swaha Prabha Rajaya Tagataya Arahate Samyak Sambuddhaya Tadyata Om Vasaji Vasaji Sankate Swaha. Hope those vibrations go far and wide. Got a bell here. We can bow to the Buddhas 3 times. And put the Buddha on this lotus flower in your imagination. Here we go. Bow in respect to the Venerable Master. See you all next week for more of the Flower Garland Sutra. Om Tofo. Bye, everybody.